Welcome, welcome. I am so excited. I was about to say Dr. Chip Hart. By now,
No,
we should
no
just make
doctor.
you, yeah, we should just give you an honorary doctorate.
Mm.
I have Chip Hart on here, and today we're going to be looking at trends in private practice. We're going to look at proven strategies that work, mistakes. What's going on, what to expect, what the state of the union is, and I couldn't think of someone better to bring on the show than Chip Hart. So super pumped. This is an episode you want to lean into because the truth of the matter is this: there's rarely a day that goes by where I don't see somebody post in a Facebook group that, if they finally made the decision to shut down their private practice. And, while of course there are reasons why this would happen, there are many things that if we have the right information, if we know the right strategies and stuff, we don't have to be victims to this stuff. And we really received no training, if you look at it, in our medical training to get us ready to run practices, but we can learn. We can learn. And if we can learn how to replace hearts, and we can learn how to intubate itty bitty babies, and we can learn how to do all these things, we can learn how to run private practices. So Chip Hart, welcome, welcome. We've been trying to put this together for weeks. I'm glad you're finally here.
Yes, well, thank you. It's a very busy year. It's hard to. You have got a rough schedule, and I've got a rough schedule.
Yeah, we're
I'm
we're
glad we can make
busy
it happen.
getting the things done, right?
Yeah,
So I'll give you a moment to introduce yourself to the wonderful people. Let them know why I'm so excited you're here, and then we'll kick this off.
sure. But I will say, if when I introduce myself, I'm just gonna have to make clear, I knew Una before she was Una,
Yes,
right?
you did.
Yes,
Yes,
I
you
did.
did.
Like I remember when she was quiet and meek.
I
She
hope
had a
I'm
little
still meek. Maybe
practice.
not quiet, but still meek.
No, you were quiet. It's all relative. But I work in the independent pediatric space. I've been doing that for 35 years, and I work for a company PCC. We do pediatric EHR. We happen to do IV pediatrics. Okay, I believe. And the nature of our business is such that, and this is true for any vendor. Okay, so I'm not here to talk about PCC. I'm here to talk about your offices. The When you create really cool software, or at least you think you do, that's only a part of the battle. It's just like when you, as a physician, you're like, I just wrote the most killer handout about whatever obesity, and if the parents would just read it and understand it, then all the problems get solved. And Una, you know that because when you try to help people, you're like, just follow the rule, just follow the formula, and that's the easy part. All right, is like organizing it for people. So you really have to go out and teach them where and how to leverage things like software and technology, but it really does all boil down to fundamental business practices. And so I've been doing that. I've been consulting for pediatric practices for decades. I realize you have a lot of non-pediatric followers, and the further you move away from pediatrics, the less I can fake it. But I also say that, I also just know that a lot of the truisms that I'm really recognizing in 2025 are just true in medicine throughout. I don't have to. You didn't invite me here to talk specifically about vaccine management. I mean, I can, but there are other bigger things to talk about, and that's what I think we're going to discuss today. So there you go.
That is it. And
Yep.
and the truth of the matter is, like you're right, there are many things when it comes to running practices that go across practices. And I actually love having interactions with people from different specialties, different
Yep.
types of businesses, and all of those things, because the core principles that work, they just always work.
Right.
That's just the way it is. And so there's just so much to learn. And yes, we're not going to talk about vaccine management today, maybe someday, but
Today.
not today.
Someday. Yeah.
So let's get right into the meat of it. Let's start with this 30,000-foot view, right? When
Okay.
you think about private practice in 2025, from your perspective, what is the state of private practice?
You always ask me big questions, and
I
so I always have to
do,
gather my
because I
thoughts.
know
But
I know you have the answers.
all right. So this year, I will tell you right now, there's one word that I would use for private practice in 2025, and that word is anxious. And I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to avoid talking about the thing. And the thing is, it's the present federal administration. It is so anti-science and so anti-child, so anti-Medicaid, so anti medicine, proper medicine, that everyone I know in this business is just sitting here waiting to exhale because they don't know what's going to happen. Now, the fact is we're going to get through this administration, so I'm not a doom and gloom kind of person. However, that anxiety that we're all feeling, like what shoe is going to drop next, has been compounded by the weight of COVID before it and the Change Healthcare disaster before it. Because the Change Healthcare problem, I think, nuked more practices than COVID. Right now, people are just feeling a lot of weight and a lot of emotional burden. I don't think it's look, you can still make amazing money as a physician. Even as a pediatrician, you can make amazing money as an independent physician almost anywhere in the country. And it's an incredibly rewarding job. Those facts haven't changed at all. And there are even resources available to you and things going for you right now that didn't exist when you opened your practice. It's just that there's this heavy, sort of almost like moral weight when you open the newspaper and you see that RFK Jr. is basically suggesting that you are trying to kill people by giving them a vaccine, when in fact he has literally caused people to die because of his anti-vaccine stance. That's just really hard. And so one of the things I've been spending a lot of my time doing lately is reminding people why they became physicians, or trying to. Like, why did you go to med school? All right. And because I work for pediatricians, no one ever tells me because it was their path to fame and fortune. Okay. Wrong specialty. Now, I don't know how many, I'm going to pick on someone who's listening right now, but I don't know how many orthopedic surgeons there are, anesthesiologists, who might have chosen their specialty because it pays well. But even they as a rule don't. There's some element of trying to help people. It's not even some element. It's a deep, important element of wanting to be contributory and wanting to help people and wanting to make people better that drove you to be a physician. Because that's hard work to become a physician. I think that drive and that intrinsic value for your work, as opposed to the money, is going to be more important the next 3 years than it's been in the history of private medicine. So I just want to remind people, during COVID, if you're in primary care during COVID, you saved lives. You just don't know how many. A surgeon kind of has an ideal. Car accident comes in, they save a kid. Fine. It's kind of black and white. If you gave 1,000 COVID shots, we don't know whose grandparent you saved. And we don't know who's, and follow that chain. We don't know who you kept out of the ICU for 6 weeks. But if you gave 1,000 COVID shots, you very likely did. I mean, the math's kind of straightforward. And that kind of contribution to society, look around, read the news. We need more of that. So in 2025, that's the state of, and so I'm talking about the emotional state, which I've tried, I've avoided doing for 35 years. You know me, I'm a nerd. I like to talk about the numbers. I like to say, well, right now, United is doing this, and here's what your E&M distribution should be. I still have to talk about that stuff, but really, I find myself doing a lot more therapy these days, if that makes sense. So I don't know. Are you seeing the same thing with the crew?
So this is very interesting because I did not see this going in this direction. Not like I knew what direction it would go. It would go in. But yes, I mean, from the beginning not from the beginning, since COVID, right? Like you said, it's just been one thing after the other, and add in the Great Resignation, right? Like people can't really find, it's harder to find and keep team members and all of that. So it's just been this perfect storm that has been going since 2019. So it's been fairly long, at this point. However, like you, I've always, because you said two things which are the same things that I say. One is, why did you go into this in the first place? This is a time more than ever where we need to be tapped into our why. And we need to have that in front of us. We need to have our vision in front of us, because we can't be predominantly looking at what is happening, right? Because that's just gonna tip you over. And so it's what is my why? Where am I trying to go? And in the chat, for those of you who are online, or those of you who watch the replay, like you can actually type that in the chat. Like, what is your why? What is the reason why you started this in the first place? Like, you want to travel back to that, right? Because we're kind of in the middle of the sea and there's a storm. And if you're not clear on where you're going, you're just like, forget it. And then the second thing you said is that it hasn't changed, that as a physician, as an independent physician, a private practice owner, that you can still make money, because there's also this thought of, so practices are no longer working, we're all
Yeah,
gonna
it's
go,
total
they're all gonna
nonsense. Yeah.
disappear, all of that
Total
stuff.
nonsense.
And I'm like, no. And so, for instance, people say, I'm just a lowly pediatrician. I'm like, oh my god, like, no, like you don't have, there are options, you don't have to be, right? And so it's like, okay, so since that is also true, let's talk about the strategies to help you get there. Like, what are the things you need to know? How do you need to run your practice? What are the things you need to stop doing? What are the things that status quo that you now need to say no to, so that even though we're in this season, you can still thrive? And so it's very fascinating. But you and I, we are on the same page there. So that brings me up to this whole concept, right? Like, so when I started my private practice, which is almost 15 years ago, next month it will be 15 years.
At the age of 15.
At the ripe old age of 15, okay?
Yeah.
So I've had my private practice for 15 years, and 15 years ago, people said private practice is dying, right? Or private practice is dead. And it's still a narrative that is out there now, which is, for people who are in private practice, they're not expecting to win. They're not expecting to be able to impact a lot of people and create some kind of financial security for themselves as they do that. And there are a lot of people who could be in private practice, but they've bought into the narrative that it's dead. So you, in the last few decades, you have looked at practice after practice after practice, and primarily or only in pediatrics, which arguably is one of the lowest paying specialties. So what's your thought about this whole private practice?
All right. So the first question I'm going to ask you: who tells you that private practice is dead? Almost every time.
Not in private practice.
Yeah. No. And the better yet, the people who have something to gain by private practice dying. Residency programs do not turn out private practice physicians; they turn out employees. I've given lectures to residents, and they say, well, can we look at your slide deck ahead of time? And they look at the slide deck. I literally had someone say this to me, a residency director. Hey, your deck to the pediatricians is great. I love it. I love that energy. But hey, that slide where you talk about going into business for yourself? Can you take that out? I'm like, what? Why? Well, because you can't do that anymore. I will tell you, PCC has put more startup practices online since COVID than we did in the 5 years before COVID. All right. There is an army of people who are going into this business. And now, to be clear, I have so much to say about this. We could go for 3 hours. I'm going to be succinct. I'll try and do it in like 3 minutes. Number one, the element of independence, or the capacity to be independent, is somewhat regional. Okay. When you are trying to practice in whatever, the greater Boston area, or parts of Dallas, okay, where you have multiple healthcare systems fighting over practices, and you have to join the Crips or the Bloods, that's Children's or General or whatever, you have to join one of the hospital teams. It's hard to be independent there. I will come back to that. You can do it, but in places like that, it is not as easy. I will say that. However, the United States is gigantic. All right. There are so many places. I don't care what your specialty is. I guarantee you that there are hundreds of cities in the United States who need your specialty. If you're a pediatrician, there are thousands. There are literally counties. Like, I don't even know what the count is, but dozens of counties across the United States who do not actually have a pediatrician in the county. Wow. Now, a lot of people here are like, oh, well, wait a second. I was talking about being independent, but living exactly where I live and nothing else has to change. Okay, just because you went to med school doesn't mean it's going to be easy. What that gave you is not a ticket to the top, but the ability to get to the top. And if you are willing to look around and say, what kind of life do I want to have? and what is my vision for myself and my practice, you can go, I guarantee you can find a place to practice in the United States that pays you well. You see the types of patients who you understand and who understand you, and you can have a huge, profound impact on your community and make enough money to have a nice house, have a nice car, and send your kids to college. Guarantee it. If you're saying, well, I don't want to change all these other elements of my life and I don't want to work more than 2 or 3 days a week, well, then you're right. Okay. And then you're right. It is hard to be independent. But that said, we work with so many practices who are starting up. And by startup, sometimes these are people who've been out of med school for 10 years. And what it so often is someone who has been working for a healthcare system for 5 or 10 years. It is. I mean, get this. You and I have talked about this before. 99% of the time, not 90, not 50, 99% of the time, it's a woman. All right. And about 50% of the time, it's a person of color. And those numbers do not match the graduation rates of any specialty. Well, okay, women. No, none of them.
None of them. Not at 99. Right. None of them.
Not at 99. All right. And certainly not Pete's. Pete's is like 60 at this point. But my point being, it's actually, oh my gosh, I don't want to go into what I think is going to be a crazy lecture about American culture and jazz and what I'll call almost protest positioning. All right. But it should be no surprise. Okay, that is where the growth market is. Because rewind, all right, private practice in the United States, I haven't measured this yet, but let's be realistic. Private practice in the United States for pediatricians began really in earnest in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. Before that, pediatricians were subspecialists. Everyone worked at the hospital. It was just the nature of medicine back then. There are private practices who are much older than that. But when you started to see the super growth of pediatricians, when you start to see that super growth of pediatricians in the United States in the 70s or 80s, and just the invisible hand of capitalism says, where are those pediatricians going to live and show up? I mean, in 1978, I don't have to look, but I guarantee you that 95% to 99% of the pediatric graduates were white, and 99% of those pediatric graduates were men. And so where do they show up? They show up in the white suburbs because that's where the kids have all the insurance. Medicaid wasn't really a thing like it is now. Okay. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just you want to open a business, you go to where the business is. Like, why do you rob the banks? That's where the money is. Why do you open up a practice in the suburbs near the junior high school? Because that's where the kids are. You don't open it 40 miles outside of town. So fast forward to today, and you look at where the growth of pediatric practices is. It's in all the places that those other entities haven't tread yet. It's in very urban or rural spaces. Often, I mean, like, those are code words for high Medicaid, all right? And it's also it's like code words for most of these kids are of color. Like, it just is. And that's why we see so many women and women of color entering this space. But I say it's 99% women and 50% people of color, rough numbers. It's still 50% who aren't. I work with practices every day who've come out of somewhere and say, wait a minute, I can do this better. And they can, because every single study that's been done shows that when practices lose independence, the quality goes down and the cost goes up. And I've never met anyone anywhere who can prove otherwise. Mm-hmm. Large health system medicine is much more expensive because the overhead is insane. And the quality of the care is gone. Because the thing that makes being a doctor, the reason I can't be a doctor in 2025 today.
Tell me why.
This
is fascinating.
I mean, look, ChatGPT exists. I could fake being a pediatrician for 10 years before anyone catches me. All right. You know it. Like otitis, like, give me a break. I could do otitis visit. All right. Because Walgreens and all those minute clinics, how do they handle otitis? They just throw antibiotics at you and charge you $150. Like, I can do that. Like, I can literally do that. The real thing that you do, the skill that you have is the human engagement and the human interaction, and to be able to sit down and talk to, because most of what pediatricians do is, frankly, make moms feel confident. Okay. Is like make moms know, like just say to moms, you're actually okay. Your kid's okay. You're like, you know what you're doing. You know, the human race lived for zillions of years. You're just fine. You're okay. And so that human element can't be replaced. That's why I can't be a doctor. I can fake it a little bit because I've lived among you for so long. But that's the reason that if I grabbed someone walking by my office, they can't be a doctor because they just can't have that conversation. But everyone here, whatever their specialty is, you are so not afraid of talking to a parent. Like if you're a pediatrician, you're like, you see a kid, you go to a little league game, you are so not afraid of those kids. Whereas everyone else is afraid of those kids. And so trying to wrap this back up, I'm trying to make a point. I think the demand, the same anxiety that's driving you as a physician, you know this already, is amplified 10 times by parents in their own families.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, kids are anxious today in a way that they just were not when you were younger, and certainly they probably should have been when I was a kid. The strong ones lived, is what it boiled down to, and the work that you're doing is more in demand today than it was. Well, I'll call it BC, before COVID.
Before COVID.
Yeah, BC, because that's like, I mean, it's a big over-under, right? There's like before COVID, before Obamacare, before capitation. Those are my lines right now. I'll probably think of better ones, but yeah, BC is the other. I'm saving that one for later. I just made that one up. But that's what I see, and I really hope everyone here understands how important their work is to the rest of your communities, even to those people who don't appreciate it.
So this is good. This is really good, because the picture you're painting is not only the narrative like, no, private practice is not dead, you can do it.
Yep.
It's that private practice is actually not dead. like that narrative is pure deception.
Yep.
Right? It's pure deception.
Deception by people who benefit from that deception.
Yeah. That's what it is, because you're saying you've taken more practices live post-COVID, or AC, I guess, after COVID, right? Than before COVID. So what that means is, no, it's not dying. More people are starting practices, and then people you wouldn't think of, right? You know, women, people of color, all those things, like higher numbers. And there's such a demand. And, you know, Chip, I think it was when I saw Walmart had closed 50 clinics. They just decided, you know, we're moving out of this area. They shut down 50 clinics. And I started thinking about it. I said, okay, what if they had 1,000 patients per clinic? We're talking 50,000 people who all of a sudden no longer have someone to care for them. And for private practice, at that moment, I was like, I've always known that we have a very critical role to play. But now we're in a place where we're the backbone. Like we're the one that's going to keep America healthy. We're the answer. We're the answer in the healthcare space, and we have to kind of be aware that what we're doing is not something that's dead. It's something that's in high demand. It's something the United States needs to be healthy. It's something that is so critical to healthcare, as opposed to seeing it as, you know, this thing that's dead. It's not dead. And I think every time we hear it from now, we should challenge it. We shouldn't just we should challenge it, because it's not true. It's pure deception that's stopping thousands and thousands from starting practices.
Yeah. And now let me say this. This is really important. I want people to understand this. This is the problem with healthcare and consolidation and growth. It's just the thing that all the PE guys don't understand. Relationships don't scale. You can't be Dr. Una to 500 patients and be Dr. Una to 5,000 patients. You have a natural limit to the number of patients you can build a relationship with. And whatever your special sauce is, I'm saying this to you, Una, but that could be anyone who's listening. You connect with your patients. Well, you don't connect to everyone, but you connect to your patients. Your patients come to you. They keep coming to you because they connected with you, right? If they don't, they go somewhere else, or sometimes you send them somewhere else. But you have them, and you make that connection. And that is not something you can put in a spreadsheet and say, all right, I'm gonna go make more 3 new Unas and expand my pediatric practice empire, and then flip it to United Healthcare, because that's what the PE guys want to do. So relationships don't scale. And all of these PE firms are going to blow up practices. It's already, I mean,
It's already
oh my gosh,
happening.
it's already
Yeah.
started. I could, go Google, like Southern California pediatric private equity, and you will find articles right up through yesterday about what's happening in our space.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
I didn't know that happened already.
Oh yeah. I
Okay.
will. I don't want to like end up in the back of someone's,
Yeah, don't end up in the back. I'll
Lincoln
text you.
Continental. But yeah. So, but you can. The fights are already happening. I mean, I have clients who have sold to private equity, and it's funny. There is a funny kind of hypocrisy or dichotomy to it. So I know great practices who sold to private equity, and they tell me 2 things. Number one, I'm going to quote someone. These are direct quotes, first person quotes, because one of my clients was at one point a nationally famous pediatric practice. All right, they were in People magazine. That should give it away if you Google around. They were really well known. It's probably the most dynamic and progressive pediatric practice in the country at the time, doing amazing work. And one of the owners said to me, he said, first of all, I just want you to know, hear it from me. He said, they haven't kept a single promise they made. All of the things that they said they were going to deliver, they've delivered on none of them. In fact, a number of things are worse. If you go to their Facebook page, you will see their patients are livid and are fleeing the practice. This was a 19-doctor practice, I think. And the patients are fleeing in droves because the practice doesn't know how to run. He's like, you would think a bunch of guys who've gotten like $500 million or whatever the number is would know how to run a business, but they don't. All right. So on one hand, he's telling me this, like, they are killing my practice and I'm sad. On the other hand, he looked at me, he said, but I would do it again in a second. And I was like, what? He said, yeah, the problem is I ran that practice for 20 years. He said, quoting him directly, this is the first time I've slept in 20 years because it's not my problem anymore.
Wow.
I'm retired.
Wow.
And I said, wow, I thought about that a lot, and I continue to think about it. And what that told me was, so the challenge with that practice, without trying to throw those guys under the bus, all right, was that they didn't have a succession plan. Now, I know they tried. I'm very familiar with what happened to this practice, and they literally exhausted all the options they could think of, except for selling to the hospital, which they would never do because the hospital is the devil for them. They left the hospital. So they could not sell a hospital. There were no local buyers. None of their other partners, none of the other physicians wanted to run the practice. So the choice is, well, we just shut the practice, or we cash this big fat check and maybe it works out. And if it doesn't work out, I still have this big fat check. And that's effectively what's happened. And so I don't begrudge them the decision they made in a heartbeat, but there are, unfortunately, just like I said, pediatric practices started popping up in the 70s and 80s. Well, guess how old all those guys are now?
Yeah.
And they're now retiring. And that's why. So one thing I'll say, what's interesting, 20 years ago, when people were selling out to practices or selling their practices, it was all to hospitals or big healthcare systems. And when it doesn't matter what part of the country, you're in Chicago, you're in California, you're in California, Northern California, you're in Dallas, you're in Miami. When a hospital bought a practice in a town, they always bought the weak ones, the ones that weren't being run well, the ones that were just on their last gasp, because that's who would sell. The private equity firms, though, they specifically target high performing practices.
Yeah.
And they dangle a huge carrot for many of them, even though a lot of it's gone away. The interest rates kind of knocked them off their pedestal. And so what's happened is there are high performing practices in different parts of the country who got bought up by PE. And I'm not aware. Look, if one of your listeners is a PE guy, or you are one of those practices who got bought out by PE and you're doing better, tell me the story. I want to hear it. But it's pretty safe for me to say that I don't really know anyone who is delighted with how their practice has turned out. I mean, the money's still green, but no one says like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad they're running my practice now.
No, haven't heard that. I've talked to many people, haven't heard it yet, but you've talked to more people than I have. But
no, I don't think that's true, but I'm doing all the talking today. You're supposed to interrupt me and tell me where I've got it wrong.
No. I don't think you have it wrong. And
okay,
but you did bring up something that I want us to explore a little more. And this whole concept, right? So for instance, I have a client that I worked with, and we've worked together now for 3.5 years, somewhere around there. And when we started working together, she was at a point where she had been in private practice at this point for at least over a decade. And she was like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's so stressful. I'm not able to, sleep at night. I'm not able to take vacation, all the challenges with the insurance companies and the whole 9 yards.
Was she solo? Is she solo?
She was solo at the time, or it was just her and a nurse practitioner, like someone she was still, responsible for in a way. And so she comes in, and one of the things I talk about is, how to build from the beginning with the end in mind, right? And you talk about this as well, as far as succession plan. And we don't have the liberty of not treating our practices like businesses. Like, it is a business, right? Now, of course, we lead with the people. We don't lead with profit, right? Like, so it's people first. But right after that, right underneath it, not like number 10, like right after it, it's profit, it's team. Like, how do I build the team that can run this in such a way that I can go on vacation, I can sleep at night, and all of those things. And so it's very fascinating because I interviewed her not too long ago, or someone on my team interviewed her, and to hear her say this: I now work 2.5 days a week. I love my practice. I love my team. I love what I do. And we just had our first $1 million month. Like, and again, so we can build practices where, yes, when that time comes, we don't have to run away from them. And my goodness, we don't want to run and not sleep and practice for 50 years and then sell to private equity and then sleep and that, you know what I mean? Like, and so based on your experience, right? If you were to talk to somebody who maybe this is their first year in private practice, or this is their first 5 years, and you're like, okay, I've had so many conversations with people at the end of their career. Like, if I were you, these are the things I would pay attention to now. So you end up with a practice and a life that you want. What would you tell them?
Oh, that's a good question. I have two veins of answers. Okay. I'm going to give you my short, tactical set of answers first. Right? And this is where I spent 20 years of my career, like, paying attention to this stuff. You've got to get your business fundamentals down, period. All right. As soon as you're more than one doctor, you're pretty much guaranteed to be $1 million business. Okay. So what other $1 million businesses don't know how to read a P&L, don't know how to, haven't set a budget? I mean, the only profession in the world that I'm aware of that doesn't set a budget are private practice physicians. And why? Because for 50 years, you generate enough cash, you didn't need to make a budget. You can always just go see 10 more patients to take care of the roof or whatever. It's a really bad business model. Or it's a really bad way of running a business.
Repeat like forever. This is so good. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's okay. So it's those business fundamentals. So you have the fundamentals of running your business, all right, which have to do with even understanding just the top level of accounting. You don't have to go in, like, a lot of people go into medicine because they don't like business, but once you own a business, you have to understand it, or you're just an absentee landlord in your own building. Okay. So there's some fundamentals to business. And then depending on your specialty, there are some fundamentals for your specialty. Like, to pediatricians, I would say, here are the 5 measures you need to know. You need to, like, for pediatricians, I would say, you need to have an incredibly active and constantly executed plan for doing preventive care. All right. You need to be constantly fluffing your patient base and constantly bringing them in, because that relationship building is how you keep your patients. It's how you keep your sanity. It's how you keep your intrinsic reward. And by the way, that's how you pay your bills. All right. So that's my tactical set of answers. And I have literally, you just Google my name. You can find my blog or 1,000 videos I've done where I talk about that. But here's the other thing that I've pivoted to, and it's kind of funny because I was coming to this on my own. Coming to this conclusion on my own, and I was starting to produce some content that would relate specifically to mission, vision, and values, which was stuff I felt I still feel uncomfortable talking about, because I'm like, mission, vision, values. You're like, I can't prove anything with that. Like, I can't add up your E&Ms and say, see, that should be $1 million. I can like prove you wrong if you want to fight with me about something. Mission, vision, values, I can't prove you wrong. But so I always feel a little bit exposed talking about, but I had just come up with a couple talks that talked about this. And the one that really triggered it was, I give this talk all the time. Do you work with the wrong people? And it was just me brainstorming and trying to articulate things I was assembling. And then it turns out, oh my gosh, there's a whole industry of people who talk about this much wiser than I do. And then I bumped into, our friend Katrina, who was also, but she was more systematic about how she was approaching mission, vision, values. Like she had in Katrina Skinner style, she had a plan. I'm just making it up as it goes along. And we ran into each other. It was like those old ads, Reese's peanut butter cups, right? Like, so that it's, and she started showing me how she articulated it. And then I was like, well, there are these elements. And so I'm going somewhere with this. For a new doctor, for a young doctor, for someone who's just like, right now, you've been working your ass off for 5 years because you're just trying to get all your ducks in a row. If you do not have a clearly understood by you and everyone who works for you and everyone who comes to see you mission, drop everything else. I don't care what your E&M distribution is. I mean, I do a little bit. All right. I care how you set your prices. Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
The practice needs to be alive to have the mission, vision, and value.
Right. And you can fix the prices in like 10 minutes. Okay. You can take care of making sure your vaccine coding is done right in 10 minutes. All right. But you have to sit down and talk about your values and your mission. And you have to get that tattooed on everyone's heart and brain in your office, everyone who works for you, everyone who comes to see you, because that is the beacon that you will follow. And it does two things. Number one, it is your guideposts for keeping your practice viable. It's your way of reminding yourself, okay, I've got to, in order to deliver the care that I'm talking about here, I have to make this money. In order to finally admit that I need to fire that front desk person who's killing me, she doesn't fill our values. Like it has that kind of practical application. But the other thing it does is let me give you a really huge example of what it does. All right. I have evolved to the point that when I sit and work with someone and work on their mission statement, I tell them, not only do I want you to picture this, I want you to literally go make this happen. You come up with your mission statement. Katrina has this idea of a micro mission, something you can say in about 5 to 8 words. Okay. You have your micro mission. That should be on the wall behind your front desk, so every single person who walks into your office sees it. Because as soon as you drive your culture, because that's what this is all about, as soon as your culture, as soon as you say it out loud, you are making a promise to everyone who works for you and who will come see you. This is who I am, and this is what you can expect from me, and this is what I expect from you. I will give you an example. All right. It's not an exaggerated example. It's a true example. It's an example that might not fit everyone here, but I think you will understand what I mean. All right. I was at I think the first Women in Pediatrics event, and I was in a little room with 4 or 5 practices, and we were talking about values. All right. And when I talk about, all right, let's sit down and talk about your values. What makes you special and different? Why should someone see you? Because if I get a room full of doctors and I say, okay, tell me about the values of your practice, everyone listening right now, I guarantee it, would say, well, we're evidence-based. I'm like, yeah, no shit. Everyone's evidence-based. Like, that doesn't make you special. Of course you're evidence-based. That's why you went to med school. All right.
Like, I hope you're evidence-based.
I hope you're evidence-based. Like, no, the only time you should mention evidence-based is if you're in a community that isn't. All right. But by and large, being evidence-based is not a distinctive value. All right. So I was making fun of people about that. One of the people in the class was very influential, maybe even almost single-handedly responsible, but very influential at blocking the anti-trans legislation that was happening in her state. Okay. And this, my example works regardless of how you feel about this issue. Okay. I feel very strongly about it in one direction, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I'm about to tell you. So we sit down, we're doing the values, and we talk about it. And she just says, like, she's going through her values. She goes, oh, I think I want to use the word inclusive. And I'm like, that's the best example of a value I've ever heard, period. And it has nothing to do with how I feel about that value. But as soon as you say the word, my practice is inclusive, you are telling the world, I accept and embrace patients for whom this word means something. It means that for 10% of the families in your community, you're saying this is a safe space. And you're also saying to that other 10 or 20% who don't like that, don't come to my office. All right. And you're also saying, if you want to work for me, you are going to support being inclusive in my practice. Okay. And and to be clear, she was talking about being inclusive because that is a code word, as we know, but she actually also means it as broadly as possible. Okay. She is saying, my arms are open to everybody. And I am not excluding anybody. And I'm like, you just made an incredible promise to your community. And I was like, honestly, I got goosebumps in this class. And it also because it lined up with her. And I know her and her values and how she works. I'm like, that is perfect. Because you just made a promise. And you also are telling everyone. Now, this is where I'm going with this. Because you mentioned it. You talked about the great resignation. And the biggest problem that everyone on this call has, which is finding and hiring good people. Here's a lesson, or here's something I want you to remember. You do not have to hire everybody. The hospital does, okay? And whoever else is big in your town, FedEx, they have to hire anybody with a heartbeat, okay? Anybody who isn't a thrice convicted felon, they need to hire because they are scrambling all the time. You only need to hire one person usually. And you only need to hire someone who aligns with your values. Mm-hmm. So when people tell me, oh, I can't get a nurse because we can't compete with the hospital, nobody likes working for the hospital. Or certainly no one who likes working for you likes working for the hospital. Who cares what the hospital is offering? What the hospital is offering might be more money, but the hospital is no way is the hospital offering your flexibility for time. And no way are you treating that nurse or that MA like the hospital does, just a number. You better punch in and punch out. And if you don't follow these rules and sign all these things, you're like, no. We take care of kids. We have fun in our office. You get to dress up in a costume, or we have a party, or we do this stuff because we actually really care. And most humans really, really care. Certainly anyone who goes into medicine. So you don't have to worry about hiring everyone. You just have to worry about hiring people for whom money isn't number one. It can be number two, like it's number two. But once you realize that and you say, okay, I've been out of practice 5 years. I've been working for the man. I want to start my own practice. I get those calls all the time. And what they tell me is, oh, I've got a logo and I pick my colors. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, I don't care. What's your mission?
You don't care at all.
No, I don't care at all what your colors are. Your logo. No parent has ever chosen a practice based on their logo. But what they do choose a practice on is their stated mission statement that's on the front of that page. Okay. And when you can say, my mission is, and I've heard some like killer mission statements in my time where I'm just like Oh, now you just told the whole world who you are. I want to bring my kid there. That is the thing you need to do. And if you have a mission and everybody knows in your practice, if you walk to your front desk today and you say, what's the mission of so-and-so, pediatrics, and they get it in one, you're winning. And those people will fall in line with you to do what it takes to take care of those kids so that when the next disaster comes, let's be realistic. We got 2 more years of this. I almost swore 2 more years of this nonsense. All right. 2.5. And I mean, like, this is not a hard prediction to make. It is quite likely that we are going to have some kind of massive vaccine preventable outbreak. Okay. If measles shows up in your office,
very, 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 very likely, and it's
right.
been coming like for years.
Yeah,
It's been
yeah,
we've been preparing for it.
Yeah. So if you, I'm just gonna say, it doesn't. Your specialty does not matter.
Doesn't matter.
Someone with measles shows up in your practice is shut down for 2 days. Of course, unless you're in one of these crazy states that doesn't give a shit anymore. So like no one cares. But if you're like a actual doctor, okay, and someone shows up with measles, you have to shut the space down for whatever it is, 48 hours, because it's so communicable. And what all these bozos forget is, oh yeah, you can die from measles, though it's unlikely in the 21st century. But what does happen is your immune system gets reset. So you don't die from measles, you die from a version of COVID 10 years from now, or some other disease, because your immune system gets reset. When you get measles, your life expectancy drops by 10 years. So that's probably coming. So how do you prepare your office for the next disaster? By everyone understanding what your mission is. That's how. So if you ask me, I don't care about renegotiating your contracts, but of course I do. I don't care about you belonging to a GPO, but of course I do. I care that you have a mission and a vision and you have values, all right? And you have a plan. That's the most important thing. I haven't even had any caffeine yet. I'm a maniac. I'm sorry to be so crazy, but you always ask me these triggering questions.
But I'll tell you something funny, right? Like, as I think about what you said, when I first started my practice, if I was a year into practice, 2 years into practice, I would have been like, okay, Chip, I'm not here for that. Okay.
Yeah, no,
I need to make my cash flow better. I need to hire this team member and all of that stuff.
You're thinking week to week, day to day.
One of the very first things I did when I started my practice was I came up with a mission statement. And we can't judge it by any rules because I didn't really know what I was doing. This is 15 years ago.
But it was something.
It was something. And this is what it said. Ivy League Pediatrics provides expert medical care with unparalleled customer service in a profitable way. And I picked those things on purpose.
Killer.
I picked the expert because that's a given. Okay.
Yep.
Unparalleled customer service because so many places I went to, it's like this is the doctor's office, so we don't have to be nice, we don't have to be warm, we can be like cold, and we give you what you need and you get away. I wanted to build a practice where people feel like they're coming to see their aunties and uncles who happen to be medical professionals, right?
Yes.
And then in a profitable way, because I was very clear in medicine, we treat profit like a cuss word. But one of the best things I can do for my patients is run a profitable practice. Because if I run a profitable
if you're not
practice,
there,
I get to continue serving them.
Yeah.
And so I had that. And then it's so funny that almost every decision we make is funneled through that lens.
That's
15
exactly
years later. It is funneled through that lens. And so like, my practice is say, I want to hire this person. Great. But you're going to show me how they're going to provide expert medical care with unparalleled customer service, and they'll do it in a profitable way, meaning that me hiring them doesn't mean our profit margin disappears. They're very clear on what their revenue generating activities are all. So we're good. That's the lens we use to judge that, right? And even with the values, it's like timeliness, because I cannot stand tardiness. Okay, so like it's like, oh, go away, pick another vice.
I think I was early today.
If you're gonna pick a vice, pick a real vice, like not So timeliness. Integrity. So what we say is what we do. Innovation. Because if you're like, the way we've always done is the way we're going to do, you do not belong here. You will hate it here because we will change things. excellence, meaning doing the best we can with what we have,
Yep.
and then smiles, just this outward disposition of, and so
Yep.
it's so funny, first year in, and 15 years later,
It still
it's still the
works.
North Star, right?
Yep.
And it's what's helped us get through COVID, get through the Great
And you ask the
Resignation.
questions every time. Is this good for the patients? Is this high quality? Is this going to harm the business? And if you're like, whatever, yes, yes, no, then you're like, yep, let's full speed ahead. This is how I describe what you just did. All right. So let's also be clear before I do. The reason you are now doing what you do is because of that mission.
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
So that is the over under, because you've met plenty of doctors who are smart and hardworking and even ambitious. But you can be all three of those things. If you have no plan, if you have no vision, doesn't matter. It's just luck after that. The way I describe it is this. All right. Let's just say it's you, solo doctor, and you have one employee who does everything that you don't do. All right. Like, they answer the phones, they send their bills, they do everything. They're front desk. And if you're that tight, you have a one exam room office, you don't have to have a full mission vision all the time, because you and the other person, you see each other. And after like 3 or 4 weeks, one presumes your employee understands you and so on. All right. But that's not what happens. You have your employees constantly make decisions about your practice and in front of your patients, where you don't get to be on their shoulder telling them what the right answer is. Right. And so like, let's say you've got a small empire, you've got 3 locations and 20 doctors, and you are trying to maintain culture in that circumstance. What you want is this little AI person on the shoulder. Don't say this, do this. And like you said, I need smiles, I need so forth. I need innovation, I need integrity. That person, you can't do that. So what I always said is, you have 2 choices. Do you remember the Choose Your Own Adventure books? Like, where you read the book and it says, okay, if you go down the left-hand path, turn to page 75. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you could create a Choose Your Own Adventure book for your front desk. If the patient acts crazy during the phone call, turn to page 71. Okay. If the patient acts normal, go to page 72 and then ask these questions. And you could actually create a Choose Your Own Adventure book that tells them the right thing to do every time. The problem is, that book would be 500,000 pages long, and you would have to add 1,000 pages a day, because your parents are crazy. All right. They just are. Like, you get confronted by stuff all the time. So your alternative to providing them step-by-step instructions to every single decision they might have to make, instead, is to say, nope, we are going to trust you, but you are going to follow this culture. And if you can ask yourself, am I smiling? Am I showing integrity? Am I using innovation? If you can answer those questions to me, then I trust your decisions. And if later on I come back and I'm like, how the heck did you get into this mess you're in? And that person can say, well, I followed our values. Then you can look at it and be like, all right, we're on you like, I might not like what, like, I would be in the same problem. I might have the same problem you are. Now we can, as opposed to what happens is, you have people who work for you, and you come back and you're like, oh my God, these people, all they do is cause me trouble. Yeah. All they do, like, one bad employee causes all the problems in your office.
Yeah.
And strong culture, you have strong culture or Choose Your Own Adventure book. That's infinite. One or the other. You can't do it in between. And most people do neither of those things.
And I would highly recommend culture over the book. Okay, the book is too long.
Yes,
it's too big of a book.
Me too.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to ask you a question. All
Okay.
right. I have an answer for myself. But if I called you up earlier today and said, "Hey, I need a new culture book, a book about culture and how it works and how it might work in my practice," do you have a book you'd recommend?
There's a book that I like. It's called Customer Rules.
Okay.
And the author worked at Disney. I don't remember his name.
One of the Disney books.
One of the Disney books. I don't know if it's Disney. Like, I worked at Disney once upon a time. I don't know if it's a Disney book in that way. But it's a lot of scenarios and examples and stuff like that. Very lots of thinking will go into that. Like, how could I apply that here? And I think I like it because the customer service is a huge part of our mission, right? Like, how do we bring that? Medicine is already like, people aren't coming to you because they're happy, right? Like, there's something going on, right? So how can we make this a safe place and make it a great, as great of an experience as it could be, you know? And a lot of times,
so what is it called again? Because I'm writing it down.
Customer rules.
Okay.
Yeah, really good book. Really good book. Okay, so before I let you go, you know, someone is on here is like, I hear this, I hear the culture, I hear the mission, I hear the values, I hear that. I'm good. Okay, let's talk about the money though. You said you don't care about it, but you do. So let's talk about it. Okay, so when you think about it, and again, you've talked to thousands and thousands of private practice owners over the years. What would be the top? Let's pick three, like the top three mistakes that you find private practice owners make that directly impacts the bottom line negatively.
Okay, so I'm gonna go beyond the obvious.
That overachiever, go beyond.
Yeah, because the fact is, not understanding CPT coding is still like the single dumbest thing that you guys do. Like, not understanding the literal tools that the rule set that you are used to be paid. Like, I am fully employed dealing with people's CPT nonsense. That's 10-minute discussion. Nope, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about a couple things that most people don't spend time talking about. At the top of my list, if you were to call me, like you, Dr. Uno, were to call me and say, Chip, my practice is struggling right now. Okay, there are two levers that I will look at immediately once I go past the CPT coding. The first thing I'm going to say is, your people aren't going to like this one. How much are you working? Because the number of times I've been told, like, oh, I can't, like we can't pay the bills. And I'm like, you do 3 clinical days a week. Sign me up for a job where I only have to come into the office 3 days a week. Like, that's just not a thing in any other business. Like, if you actually want, if you feel like you've got money trouble, you need to be open hours before 9 a.m. and maybe after 5 p.m. because it's a service business and you serve other people. You know, they can decide to go somewhere else and they do. So one of the first things I look at is, like, how hard are you working? And just as a rule, all right, as a rule, I've done a huge amount of research on this. If I see a pediatrician who doesn't even cross the 3,000 visits a year threshold, I'm like, you are going to have trouble. It's this scale. It doesn't scale very well. I mean, you know, unless you go down into the DPC space and stuff like that. If you're a typical pediatrician and you're seeing 10 kids a day and half of them are Medicaid, it's going to be hard to pay those bills. It's a fact.
Okay, so you might need to say that a little louder. And to be clear, and this is for everyone, because they're going to be like, but Dr. Una, like, can you work 3 days a week? Yes. But
yes.
If the money's not working, you
have to work 4 or 5. And right? So, but let me be clear. I'm describing a solo or a group where everyone is a partner. Can you work 3 clinical days a week if you have people working for you? Of course.
Of course.
And what are you doing on those other 2 days that the rest of us work, or 4 days that the rest of us work? You're managing the business. So yes, you can absolutely do 2 clinical days, 1 clinical day, 3 clinical days, but other people have to work for you.
Yes.
There's unless you're happy making 70 grand a year. All right. So that's what I'm going to tell you. All of my clients who make real money all have people working for them. And guess what? We could be on a podcast about florist's office or law firms or muffler guys. That's what they all do. A muffler guy who works for himself has no one working for him. That's a tight ship. The muffler guy who has 6 bays and 5 guys working for him, the hairdresser who has 8 chairs and rents them out, that's how you make money. Okay? That's why everyone is unhappy with the mid-levels. Like, guys, they make money. So that's the first thing. Now, but here's the second thing.
Can I interrupt you for
please.
a second? Because this is so important. I can't tell you how many times I would have someone say, I believe my patients deserve much longer visits. And I only want to see, so like the example you gave, 10 patients a day. And this is in an insurance-based model, not in a DPC model.
Yep.
And I'm like, please, and so I'm so glad you said this, because I'm like, let's not get this twisted. This is an economic sport.
Yeah.
And there is an equation. Okay.
Yeah.
So your high volume, low tickets to make money, or your high ticket, low volume to make, like, so you can't just choose. You can't choose 1 + 1 is equal to 5. It's an
Right.
equation. It
Yeah.
has
Just,
to
you know,
add
I
up.
always tell people, math problem, guys. Get your pen out. The math is easy.
The math is
Number of
easy.
visits time revenue per visit equals your total revenue, and that's the nut that you have to make your guarantee, and you get what's left over.
You get
And
what's left
that
over.
model has never changed.
Yes. So the reason why I'm just, emphasizing that is because, guys, the math has to math. The numbers have to
Yep.
work.
Yep.
And you cannot have cash flow problems and have the ability to generate cash and say no to the ability to generate cash. Like you just can't do it. Okay, so I'm going to back off. And if you're getting it and you're liking this and you're like, Chip, you're amazing, just type that in the chat so maybe we can get him back. Okay. All right, go ahead.
Now, here's the other one. Here's a big one. This is one that is subtle but pervasive. When you have people working for you, or if you have partners, one of the other threads I like to pull is, how much are you paying those people? Are they making money for you? All right. Now,
You're making me so
I
happy.
know how you feel
I'm
about
just gonna
this.
chill. This is so good.
All right, I know how you feel about this. I'm going to take I'm going to have a slight variation to your typical position. Okay. And that is, if I own a practice, I don't have a problem with someone making a decision to hire someone and not make money on them, because that might be a lifestyle choice or it might be a succession planning choice, but it's still a planned choice, The real problem occurs is when you're paying someone $190 and they're bringing in $220, and you can't figure out why you're not making money, and it's because you paying that person extra $150,000. The number of it is so common, and when I see on SOPM or in other places, where the doctors hang out, and they're like, "What's the going rate for a doctor in your town?" And I'm always like, I don't care. It doesn't matter
what it is.
It doesn't matter what it is. And furthermore, whatever number anyone gives you is bullshit. All right. Because who comes in and says, well, the starting salary for a resident, someone out of residency is $230. You know who tells you that? Residents. They're all every time. And so, yes, it doesn't matter. Their salary should be based on what gives your business margin. Anything else means they're being subsidized. And if someone looks at you and says, look, I legit I'm holding up my piece of paper to you that says, here's my offer from so-and-so healthcare associates, and they're going to pay me $250. And you can say to them, and how many visits a day do you think you're going to do? And they say, oh no, it's in my contract, 15. And then you can say, well, I'm just going to tell you this. About a year into this gig, they're either going to tell you to double your volume or you're going to be looking for a job. And I might be here for you. I might not be for you. I might have filled that gap with someone who understands what we're about. I mean, that's a fact. So I always tell people, ignore what everyone else is doing. Your numbers are your numbers. And it's the napkin math has never changed. Number of visits, revenue per visit, overhead. I have literally written those things out on a piece of paper for people, shown them 1,000 times. And this is what it looks like. Now, I'm not saying this to be self-serving because I'm not selling anything. If you go to my blog, I have a bunch of tools that I've released over the years about how to do these calculations. Someone who was at one of my talks came up with a new tool, because I would say during this talk about having to do with productivity versus salary, I'd always say, I want to create a tool sometimes that does this. And I never did it. And this one doctor, this guy, Mike Jordan from Florida, did it. And he did a better job than I would have done. He did this amazing job where he has a tool where it shows you how you can balance salary versus productivity, because some people want salary. I'm like, okay, I'll give you a salary, but the more I depend on your salary, the less risk you want to take, the more margin I'm going to expect. The more productivity you're willing to give, the less margin I will expect, because I'm taking less risk, so you can get more reward. Those two things. This goes like this. And so you can find on my blog. I just did it, I don't know, a month or two ago. There's a really good discussion about that. But that's the other big leak. When people have employed employees, clinical employees in particular, who aren't paying their way. That's the next thing. Now, for pediatricians specifically, in 2025, the place where I'm capturing the most revenue for people has to do with their vaccine coding. And that's in part because I've been yelling at everyone for so long about E&Ms and sick to well visits. And I'm like, most of the people who listen to me have like moved the needle at this point. I mean, let's be honest. Okay. When I started doing this job, the average revenue per visit was like $75, $65.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm
That's
glad I wasn't doing it when you started.
Yeah. Well, I mean, inflation and stuff like that, but it's now like $190, that's for a pediatrician. So like the needle has moved a lot, but the big mistake that people make is they're not really good about ensuring that every vaccine that you give has the right vaccine admins on it. Just this week, I'm meeting with them next week. I found a practice who made a change to their Medicaid billing and have missed $250,000 worth of Medicaid admins. Like that happens all the time. And for your listeners, you ready? You want a really fast and easy way to check? This is a benchmark you can do in 30 seconds. Run a report. Add up all your CPT codes. Figure out how many vaccines you've given, because they're all right in a row in the table, right? Or in any sort of list. So you start with the 90744, whatever's first, okay? And you add all those vaccines up. So I did 10,000 vaccines last year. How many primary admins should you have? 10,000. That is, so you add up your 90460s and 90471s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. Those numbers should be within 99.5% accuracy of each other. Anything over 0.5% error is worth figuring out. And this practice had a 50% error. Yep. And so that's the biggest leak I see in the pediatric space.
We got a special.
Yeah, there you go.
We got a special. And for everyone else, you can look at your E&M codes.
Yes, E&Ms. Like every specialty has like a magic thing. A thing that they do that's different from everyone else. And whatever yours is, I mean, I'm sure it would take me about 10 minutes with a dermatologist to be like, yep, this, and this. But really, I can't, my brain has been so driven by the primary care space that I probably can't talk much about what it's like to be a surgeon, but for everyone in the primary care space, which I think is most of your fans, the thing that you want to consider all the time is what makes patients come back to me. All right. Because here's the thing about primary care that everyone is sort of like, no one talks about this, but even back when Obama was president, the good old days. All right. The people talked about bending the cost curve. There's this phrase that was used over and over and over again, bending the cost curve for medicine. And that was their way of saying, we want to reduce the demand for medical services. We want to have people show up at the ER less. We want people getting fewer labs and so on and so forth. That was bending the curve. And the whole concept of ACOs is based in the concept of reducing the amount of medical spend that the patients have. But here's why that whole concept was stupid from day zero. Everyone in primary care, we need to spend more money in primary care. Look, almost half the kids over the age of 12 in the United States haven't had a well visit in a year. How is that bending that curve good? We want to get that down to 40%? I mean, like, come on. We need to get those kids to 100% because you're missing all of the abused kids, all the neglected kids, all of the depressed kids, all the kids who need screening. We need to bend the curve up in primary care. And everything I just said for kids is easy. The same is true for adults. All right. And so if you're in the primary care space, OB, family practice, internal medicine, pediatrics, I don't know who else. But that's what in that space, you need to be thinking about what makes my people come in. How do I make this a place where people want to come to? Because the cheapest thing that you do, or pardon me, let me rephrase that. The most expensive work you do as a primary care physician is like literally decimal places away from the work that everyone else does, and it prevents that. So if we want to bend the curve, we got to spend more on primary care. And so I want you to think about, how am I getting patients in my office? There you go.
I like it. Okay. All right. So this has been so good. And guys in the chat, just let Chip know this was great. But this has been so good. I want to leave us with two things. I'm gonna have you tell people. I posted a link for your blog
Okay.
too. But I'm gonna have you
Thank you
tell
very
what
much.
people where to find you. But
Okay, appreciate it.
in private practice, one of the things that we've done, like Chip, we're committed to helping private practice owners thrive. And in 2025, as we got, at the end of 2024, we started thinking like, what is the thing that we can do to put doctors in a position where, yes, you didn't get a business education. Yes, you can't learn all the things. Maybe you're even strapped for time. What can we do to serve you, to help you? And that's when we started the Profitable Private Practice movement, which is, it is a movement of doctors who've decided to defy the status quo, decided to unsubscribe from this whole foolishness of private practices dying, who've decided to build private practices that will impact a lot of people, while creating time and financial freedom for themselves, right? And so the movement is entremd.com/movement. Is less than a cappuccino a day. We have, we come every Thursday. That's what we do. We come every Thursday. We work on our businesses. And then we go back to seeing our patients and all of that. And I cannot tell you the kind of wins that people have created in their businesses, because a lot of these things are very simple to implement. We just have to know them and implement them. Okay. So entremd.com/movement. Chip, tell people where they can find you, because you have a lot of thoughts about all these things, so they can get the rest of them.
The easiest places to find me, number one, you can go to my blog, which is, I do every couple weeks, but I've been doing it for so long. There are like 800 blog entries, something like that. So that's Chip's blog.
We need to celebrate 1,000 when you get there.
Yeah, I should think about that. I hadn't thought about that. But so chipsblog.pcc.com. I mean, you can just Google Chip Hart Pediatrics. And I've been doing this for so long. I've been in so many places. Now, depending on where you are, I do a lot of speaking nationally. I speak at any AAP, any pediatric event. There's like a 50-50 chance I've been at it or are coming to it. All right. The other places I speak at, the PMI, the Pediatric Management Institute event every January that Paul Banchieri manages and runs. That's his gig. I speak there. I also speak at the Pediatric CEO event. That's happening again in November in Dallas, which is pretty. Those are such fun. Like I've never been to your stuff, but I'm sure it has the similar vibe where you're like small, intense things actually impacting people. Like that's the best feeling in the world. So pediatric CEOs like that. And I'm the unofficial mascot of the Women in Pediatrics event because I'm the guy who's there. Apparently I'm safe so far, so they let me in, but I'm over there. I don't get to like do all the stuff, but I'm over there. But that's it, because I believe really, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's anyone who thinks that women don't need their own space in some of these professional organizations is a numbnut. You know how many guys have told me, these older male doctors are like, we need a men in pediatrics event. And I was like, oh, you mean all the events that the last 50 years? The last 50 years? Like, and they just don't, like, they don't get it. So anyway, that's where I am. And I, by all means, I am delighted, always surprised, but delighted if anyone comes up and say hello. And say, oh, I saw you on Una. That would make my day.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Yep. New friends in the house. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I'm glad we could have this conversation, take it in all the places we took it to. And guys, I know the feeling of listening to something and saying, well, I'll think about that later, especially when it comes to things that are not urgent but important, things like culture. I'm so happy we got to go in that direction. Please don't think of it as, I just need to fix my cash flow. That doesn't matter, because that does matter. And the way I've been able to build a practice where it's running and I'm not there and all of those things is because that was deposited there, right? So it's very clear this is the nature and all this stuff. So everything you heard on this interview, I want you to really take it to heart. Ask yourself, how can I implement this? How can I implement this starting now? How can I implement it? Maybe put a schedule, like this is when I'll start doing that. But that's the reason we had this conversation. It's not fluff. It's none of that stuff. This will literally change the trajectory of your business. Do you have any final words before I let you go?
I
The
just want
last
to
juiciest thing. I know there's something there.
I just want to say thank you. I can't overstate how much I look forward to talking to you, because I don't know how you press my buttons just right and get me going. You know, you're a good host for these things, and so I'm really grateful. This is helping a practice out is how, that fills my bucket. And so if I help one practice live another day, that's why I'm here. And so I appreciate this opportunity. I'm grateful that you let me do this. That's all.
Well, my pleasure. And I'm grateful you're here. And I speak for everyone on here. And yes, you would have changed, you'd have changed so many practices. This is Dr. Grimes, who's part of the movement. She says, thank you so much, Chip and Dr. Una. This is lashing me and lifting me at the same time. I'm learning so much and look forward to implementing for my practice. Thanks again. Right. So there you go. Right. So thank you so much for coming on, Chip. We truly appreciate you. For everyone watching, remember, we're all about helping private practices thrive. So watch this implemented, but be sure to share it with the private practice owners in your world, because it takes all of us, and the United States needs us to thrive. Yes. They don't know it, but they need us to thrive.
Those are, the words you just said, I have said out loud in front of large audiences, and half the time people are like, what is he talking about? I'm like, no, you saved the United States during COVID.
Yes.
Like without you, we would be back in caves right now. Like it'd be down to the last 500 of us. Oh, so please don't give up.
Don't give up.
Good things.
Don't give up. We can do it. We can do that. Yep. You have so many resources to help, so much less than when I started. Yes, luckily, I found Chip, I don't know, 4 years into private practice. So, when I started using PCC. So it's been a fun journey. All right. Rooting for every single one of you. Make sure you implement this, share it with the docs in your world, and I'll see you